Oh man, I am so juiced up today because we are getting our hands on some legendary
business.
Cyclopean overlord terrain that straight up oozes raw mythic power. We're talking about crafting a slab of ancient civilizational eminence, terrain with feeling, energy, muscular presence. Wait, is that the musk of primordial might? I wanted a big crashed slab of something, and let's face it, circles are a lot cooler than squares, so let's begin with a circle. And I want the sense of a pressure wave emanating from its heart, so we'll repeat the circle and make it thinner as we go out. That's the basic idea, so now let's go force this abstract thing out of the ether and into the actual physical world. And remember, as always, before we craft, enter the sacred grove and pray to Augror the Soul Forger that she may look mightily upon your works. First principle is, how big should this be? I want to make this thing spacious. If there isn't enough space for everyone to bounce around in, they'll just stand in the same place, and that's just a sad, embarrassing situation for everyone. 18-inch diameter seems to be a sweet spot. You can use whatever method you want to draw a circle. I'm going to use this ruler with a hole in it and a lot of patience. Also, now measure and draw our inner circles. Many of you might be familiar with the 3-zone ultimate dungeon terrain, and if that's your jam, then go for it. I'm opting for what looks and feels right in the remnants of the Temple of Antediluvian Titans kind of way. We're also going to sketch out our fault lines here. I like how all the breakages emanate from a single place, like some primordial god crashed into it eons ago. One added note, there is no grid here. This terrain comes from before the time of grids, before measurement, before dividing the world up into itty-bitty squares and the subsequent mundaneness it begat. When all that is done, cut out the perimeter, but try not to be super accurate about it. You don't need the perfect micro details, just the basic reality of a circle. Now, make yourself an iced coffee, behold the sacred minglingness of coffee and milk, and get outside, because we're really going to catastrophize the surface of this piece. I'm using a chunk of rounded stone material that probably formed hundreds of millions of years ago in the cauldron of the planet's crust, and then bringing it down with a controlled strike on the styrofoam, which was by contrast probably extruded just a couple of years ago by an industrial machine somewhere in Oregon. Start your strikes with very little force, and then increase slowly until you gauge how the stone impacts the foam. I think it's important here to approach this as a slow process that over time achieves the right level of gnarliness. You won't get the right feel of sudden violence from actually being suddenly violent. Once you have the surface sufficiently tortuous, you will make a very clean, deliberate cut to make the fault lines. The clean cut here will allow you to put the pieces back together again and make the lines almost invisible if you wish, which is a cool extra level of functionality for this piece that you don't want to lose. After you've made those cuts, you can again use your utility blade to texture the sides of each piece. Again, just give the surfaces some life. Don't take away huge chunks, because you'll ruin how nicely these pieces squeeze back together to become a coherent whole. Cut the outlines of what will become your gold inlay circles with an X-Acto knife. I'm forming these so they look like a massive inlay of 24,000 karat gold. Now, look upon your works, ye mighty, and despair. This is your last chance to gouge, rupture, cleave, or otherwise shape the foam into the form you desire, because next, we paint. It's time for the black paint foundation of our primeval Death Star. Here, I suggest you get into your secret cache of raw aboleth mucus and slather it over every little millimeter of the foam. If you're running into supply chain issues with raw aboleth mucus, no worries. Black Magic Craft came up with a really good substitute, which is a mixture of Mod Podge, black paint, and water. If you haven't made it before, I'll link the video in the description. The lighting here was a bit stark. It's just the time I had available in my schedule, and of course, just before the conjunction of Soth, the sky turns unnatural colors due to the strange and terrifying celestial unities. You can take this time yourself to enjoy the conjunction, as drying will take the better part of the day. On to painting with colors! Starting with dark gray. I made mine by mixing dark gray with some black, but it's essentially just deep gray, so be smarter than me and use the deep gray straight from the store. Once that's dry, this thing is going to look grim and flat and brutal gray as the dreaded siege walls of Ulk before they were toppled by the alliance of Apepkis. But fear not, that's how it's supposed to look. It's just a base coat to establish some sense of dreary invincibility. Next up, blob on some brown stains and then also some green. This will become a grimy undercoat of splotches that will give the gray some extra personality as we move along. Moving on to the dark gray phase. And when you sponge this on, man, just look at that depth coming alive. Now things are starting to look fundamentally dungeony. Finally, for the last stage of this stone feel, I'm using khaki, with a really minimal, super even coat of dryish paint. Dabble this on with just the faintest whisper, because you're trying to persuade and seduce a beautiful high contrast, not plow over all of your existing work. This is the main event you've been waiting for, painting on the gold. Your terrain is going to come together in a new way once you see this yellow gold heavy metal tie everything together. It is the key to making this whole extinction level event feel like it was once a functioning chunk of something. Lay that gold down thick. I mean like it's going out of style. God bless America. Look at how beautiful that is. I feel like Agrawar is speaking directly to me. Black wash time, peoples. Did I actually film myself applying the black wash? No. No, I did not. Listen, when you get to the end of a long project like this and you can see the finish line, you just kind of lose sight of some of the details. In my case, I made my black wash pretty weak. I'm guessing like 1 part black paint to 15 parts water. So I ended up having to do 2 washes. And let me tell you, I really let this thing have it. There was like a standing swamp of black wash on top of this thing. A standing swamp. You're just gonna have to trust me. Apply your wash at whatever strength or add color if you want. You do you. Now, if you're feeling like you want extra credit, consider spraying a protective coat like Minuax Satin Polyurethane, which is an OG lesson from Black Magic Craft. I haven't done mine yet, but it seems like a pretty good idea seeing how this thing is fundamentally designed to have like its surface pressed up against each other. It may take a beating. And you know what Virgil says, "O thou whose great perils of the sea are over,
heavier tolls await."
Oh, last but not least, let's celebrate our flawless victory and check out some glamour shots. I don't have a studio or anything, so I have to make do with my living room, but here's some atmospheric music. There you have it, a flexibly functional piece of terrain that has that raw mythic power that you need in your game. If you like this and it gives you an amazing idea, please just go into those comments and let me know. Or just say hi, I like it when people say hi. And no video is complete without the perfunctory request to subscribe. The reality is that subscriptions really help this channel be successful. And the more successful, the more resources I can put behind making newer and better and more content, which will hopefully please you, which pleases me, and then all of our lives are better. It's like an infinite win loop, really. Thank you, thank you, thank you for watching. And always remember, stay ensorcelled, friends.